afternoon. Thanks, everybody. I'm Tom Stables. As Tim says, I'm Managing Director of National Express's coach business here in the UK. I'm a church warden. I'm a scout leader, father, husband, 3 young girls who keep me out of trouble or put me in trouble. So that's a little bit about me. I've been invited to come and give a practical view on this topic. But just before I start, just a little bit about what I do, about National Express and our background as a business and how we apply, or I try and apply, some of the thoughts to our company. So we're a business that has been around for a long time. Many people in the UK will be familiar with us. You see our coaches on the road, about 660 of them. We carry 20 million people a year around the UK. We're a listed PLC, so we have some challenges from our shareholders. We employ about 45,000 people around the world in North America. Well, like the first group, we also run school buses. It's one of those ironies, the 2 biggest private providers of school buses in North America. Our first group for National Express, obviously both UK companies. We operate in Spain. We have the largest coach network in Spain and in the UK. We operate coaches, buses, trains here in the UK as well, and in Germany and in Bahrain. So we have a global footprint. We've had interesting times. We've been a business that's been around since around about 1899, so I'm told. But properly, the brand started about 45 years ago out of the National Bus Company. And we've grown ever since, more or less, until we nearly went bankrupt with the East Coast franchise, which some people will remember. Here in the UK, well, as a group, we've probably got a little bit overextended. We're now a FTSE 250 company, and we've grown the last 6 years. And there are pressures which come with that, with constantly rising expectations of how you can achieve it. So we're a business with all those pressures. And my part of it is probably about a third of the group, and we're subject to those as well, all those requests. I'm not an academic, and that will become perfectly clear, so I feel a bit of a fraud standing here following you. I've not studied leadership styles. I've been subject to them, and it was interesting seeing the list there as I went down it. Probably could add a few. I've not studied them at length, and my mentor would know that there's little point in giving me a book to read, especially a theoretical one, because it will sit there and gather dust, I'm afraid, I have to admit. But I think I hopefully have a practical take on it, and maybe over the next 20 minutes or so can share something about trying to steer what I think has been an ethical path for our business. As Steve was saying, leadership develops over time with effort. Good leadership, I think, is always authentic. It comes from the person, and it's something about exposing who you are, sometimes just the right amount. It's not an end in itself. That's perfectly apparent. You know, we've all seen people who are great leaders. They can be a fantastic leader, but without the overarching purpose, they can be pretty awful. It's a very, very obvious statement. Picking that goal. What is your goal? Increasing profit, world domination, feeding the world, converting people to Christianity. These are all goals. And a great leader, a good leader, leadership is just making people do what you want. So unless you pick that right goal, you never, I don't think you can ever, you clearly can't be in an ethical business. Looking at businesses, because no doubt questions to consider. One came up earlier, which I've written down as well. Can you be an ethical leader in a business that is pursuing something that isn't? A cigarette manufacturer. Can you lead ethically within it? I'm sure you can make ethical choices about how you treat people, but with your overarching goal, of course, is it possible? Purposes of businesses have been discussed at length. Maximising shareholder value, or to views around serving wider stakeholders and society. I personally think that an organisation does have a duty to maximise its long-term value to its various stakeholders, including its owners. But you have to establish what your business is for. What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? What's your reason for being? Personally, I think I'm quite lucky. Well, maybe it's not luck. Maybe it's I've chosen to be where I am. That my business, we provide something which I think is pretty worthwhile. We provide transport. We allow people to travel affordably. Mobility is something which allows us all to move around, to go out, to learn, to see new places, to experience new things, to seek work, education, employment. Clearly these things shouldn't just be the realms of a few who can afford their own mode of personal transport. So providing something which is cheap and accessible seems like a worthwhile thing to do. So in some ways, ticking that box, that makes my life slightly easier, I think. But we are part of the listed PLC, so we still have those targets that somebody talked on. The demands to say, please can you deliver more profit? Now, next week, last week. So how do you go about that? And how do you maintain yourself? I think as the leader in a business, you set the direction. You set from the heart an example, and you're applying your standards consistently. That does cause change. Understanding where you want to be is vital then. And unearthing what is intrinsic in your organisation. My part of the company, we have in the order of 4,500 directly employed people. So what makes them tick? They're proud of their business. They're proud of what they do. They don't work late and say, actually, I've been staying here making sure I maximise some value for some shareholder. They stay because they want to work late, because they're helping their colleagues, their friends, or their customers. So if I go back a little bit, I joined our company about 4 years ago. And I came in at a time when the year before, I think profits had gone backwards by about 15 million, by about a third. It's been a pretty tough year. And in an attempt to deal with this, the management team, I would say now, had made some pretty interesting choices, shall we say. They'd gone out hard. They'd been put under huge pressure. Right, you've got to try and mop up this problem. And they weren't equipped to mop it up. And what had happened was that staff, customers, suppliers had all been let down. They had promises broken. Commitments were made and not followed through. Arbitrary decisions were made, and it was a pretty broken environment. Service was poor. Corners had been cut. And without stating the obvious, confidence had been lost to a great degree. Over the last 4 years, I like to think that to some degree we've rebuilt that trust and that business and that pride. And we've done it in a way that has brought our whole business with us, and we've done it in a way that is right. And we see this, we take a lot of time asking our staff and stakeholders and third parties, what do you think of us? And how do you think we behave? Going from walking into a first meeting, we run a lot of our services through third parties. Walking into a first meeting and people nearly walking out because the way we behaved was an interesting experience. And explained why. My contracts manager, he said, we have this once-a-year conference with all the operators, we don't recommend you come. I said, well, hold on, they run 80% of the service, I think you probably need to be there. But it was quite clear because of the things that had been done had really broken this relationship. So we set out 4 years ago, so well, actually we have to change that. We changed it by setting out a clear strategy of what we wanted to achieve. Now, like all corporates, we have one of those horrible vision statements, lifetime loyalty of customers, high-performing services, etc. But at its heart, what we really wanted to set out to do was actually provide great travel, great value travel. We wanted to say, actually, we're here. Why do we exist? We exist to move people around. We exist to allow people to go and do things that they want to do. It's always an interesting one, and if I'm in the office, I work in Birmingham, above the coach station, you think, things are a bit bleak or whatever, is going to sit in the coach station and watch people come in and out. And it's curious. It's a very different mode of transport to train. You stand at a railway station in the morning, you typically see a lot of pretty miserable looking people. It's when commuting somewhere or rushing around. Actually, coach business, you don't see that. What we see is people meeting and greeting. They're generally doing things they want to do. We're much more of a leisure mode, so you get this very different environment, which is quite nice. And so it's always a good boost. We can go and sit there and see what's going on. So this idea of pride in travel, and we shared it, this idea with our teams about mobility and why it was important, and it just resonated throughout our organisation. It felt right. We talked to our staff, we talked about our values, or their values, and how that worked, and captured it all like everybody does, and some nice strategies which went up on the wall. But that was fine, and that's sort of probably in one of those management textbooks somewhere about find out what people want and then guess what, try and deliver it. But I think it's for saying you can have all of that, but actually when it comes to it is how do you deliver it day to day? And that's probably where those contradictions start to emerge. You can write it down and it all sounds great in theory until you get tested. And that's probably been my experience over the last 4 years. Set out something and then say, actually, how are we going to implement this? And that feeling that only by consistently sticking to your principles will you achieve that. And that people do notice. And it is interesting over time that they're trying to apply your standards in this constant way that seems to work. If I look at it against 4 headings and what it's meant to some of those fundamentals, so I'm a transport business, so I would be remiss to stand here and not say that safety is at the heart of what we do. I suspect every business at some point will say it. Alongside our people, safety is the most important thing. Clearly, running vehicles around, it is pretty important. In fact, it's hugely important. And rather than it just being words, this is where I suppose those questions about where you spend, where you resource. So we do spend more on technology, on replacements, on making sure that the equipment we use is as good as it can be. When new technology emerges, we like to adopt early and fit it and drive forward. And we don't just keep it to our pieces. Actually, those we work with, we want you to be at the same point too. So we invest in it and spend money doing it. We have the whole management team bought in. So the whole management team are expected to be out. They're expected to be out at safety tours, going to see how things really work. We monitor results. And we make those back to those hard decisions on the list. We've had some people who are fantastic. But if they don't come and do the whole piece, there's not really a place for them within the organisation. And we'll coach them, we'll try and encourage the behavioural change, but they do have to come and actually come along with what we all want to achieve. So we monitor our results, we look at our culture, we get these great culture surveys, because we look at it and say, well, we can do all the audit and all the monitoring we like, but somebody isn't there checking up on that driver at 3 in the morning. So it's what happens when you're not there. And so only by getting this feeling and this culture around your business do you really make a difference. So we believe we've gone beyond that minimum and driven this change. We've invested in well-being for our staff to look at that broader sense of safety and benefit. We make these decisions about investments, about operators, about contracts, and it would be easy to make them perhaps by just looking at the profit and loss account. But again, that would undoubtedly be to miss the point of what leading this business is about. Those difficult choices, yeah, we can make a bit more here, but actually, long term, this is the right decision. To our customers, it's about doing Everybody says they serve their customers, great. We have these vehicles which are safe, but we try and look after people when we go wrong. And again, I'm sure every big business will say that, but it's hard. We look at it and say, have we empowered our staff who make those decisions to do the right thing? That they are the people there in the middle of the night to sort out the problem. So to our people, the word respect again. We're not the best payer. We can say that, but we treat people properly. We make probably less than £1 a ticket. So I had to carry quite a few customers around the place to make some money and to pay people. And we faced ferocious competition. But what we are at all times, and where we've changed, is being open and honest with our people all the time as to how we're progressing, why we're making the decisions we are, so they can understand that context. This, again, has been a complete shift. So that treating people right and being fair is where we are. This year we've had another trying year. We run European coaches as well, and there was terrorist incidents at the beginning of the year. There was a degree of uncertainty in the UK this summer, which seems to have dented travel a little bit. But as opposed to how the business approached problems 4 years ago, our solutions this time have come from the front line, from our teams recommending how to solve them, and we've brought everybody with us and come out stronger and without compromising. We haven't shied away from doing difficult things. So we have had to make cuts, we have had to change the shape of the business. But at all times, it's been done in a way which is consistent with how we want to behave. And some of those hard choices around people are about those, saying earlier, those high performers. When I started, I had a fantastic contracts manager who basically was hated by everybody. He was a fantastic negotiator, and he worked for 2 months of the year, because the first 10 months he did just about nothing, and then it got to around about October time, and inevitably as a December year end, there was maybe a little bit of a shortfall, so Alistair would go and find that money. Nobody really asked too many questions as to how he did, but needless to say, he was not very popular with a lot of the suppliers. And it took about 1.5 years to change the behaviour from being somebody who went and did interesting deals, I will say. Clearly they were all fine, but I think on the other side of it you might have felt a little bit bruised. But only by the open and honest feedback has that person moved and is now valued and respected by everybody, including those who in the past would have seen him far enough. So our suppliers, treating them right. Again, our approach to our suppliers, to treat them properly, to be honest, to share the rewards. In the past, our suppliers are often small family-owned businesses, coach operators. We have quite a lot of power. We could make or break many of them. And how we choose to exercise that is hugely important, to do it responsibly. And finally, looking at how we approach our community. We're in our communities, we travel around the UK, we employ people, obviously. But how can we harness our business to do more? So we alighted on 2 sort of main projects and themes. One around young people. Young people face mobility challenges or employment challenges today, so a programme of support for young folk. So how we support young people into education, employment, show talent, providing accessible travel. We do this through a large apprenticeship programme, work experience, mentoring in schools, providing support to the Prince's Trust, the Scouts, the Guides, and allowing our people to go out and do things. So we have extra volunteering days, entitlements. So to us as a business, putting something back into the community. Yes, long term, I absolutely believe it will pay dividends, because we will be seen to have done the right thing by people. We also support the military. We have those who have served us. We support the British Legion and the Poppy Factory, again in a practical sense by providing life skills, helping injured servicemen back into work through CV writing, interview skills and work placements. But all of this is fine, but the sort of challenges that go with it from my perspective, there's been many. But when I thought about it, I thought there was probably 4 key ones. And I just talked to each briefly. The first one was about setting a new direction. That I walked in and I walked into the boardroom, and the MD before me was walking out, having just told his team that the guy who's now my boss had just fired him. So that was an interesting experience going in. But finding that moment to find your own voice, I think you've talked about it, about taking the time to listen, not only listen to others, to find the time to think, but to listen at the quiet times and think, actually, what is it that I really want to do? And what do I feel is the right thing? Because you've got plenty of people who give you advice. And it's not unbiased advice, it's from their perspective, and you have to find your own. And to hold on to that was something which was a bit of a challenge at times, particularly when, as I started, everything came pretty thick and fast. There was plenty of things that hadn't been done, so everybody thought, actually, we got the new boy here, this will be easy, we can get through all our pet schemes in the first week. I think in the first afternoon they had me closing two sites. It was like, no, this isn't going to happen. And discovering of how much of yourself to show, that you need to show yourself to be vulnerable. And that can be difficult. I found it difficult, particularly when there was plenty of folk around who were quite happy to see things go wrong, and maybe even to give you a hand into that failure. And exposing your own beliefs and what your value set is. And for me, it was the realization that although people maybe didn't share them, that being prepared to be authentic and share where you came from was understood and respected and helped people come on the journey. For me, strength of having a clear Christian faith gave me a sense of what was right and wrong, where I wanted to be. And that's helped me stay true to what I wanted to do. It did take time, a little time, and my style developed, and those who work for me would say that it changed quite a bit from when I started. And the openness changed, that actually trying to say this changed direction from something which had been very money-grabbing into something else. If I'd just gone out and said that, it would have been probably laughed out. So almost by stealth, by people seeing what we were doing. The second one was about dealing with external forces. And yes, I run my company, but I'm part of a group. And I do have, I'm in an environment where people want different things and they expect different things. But you do, I think somebody said it earlier, you do make your own choices. We all have a choice, and it's probably about my one quote I can remember, I think, is Kant about the doctrine of autonomy. That you can't rely on hierarchy to say, well, it's all right, I was told to do it. No, you ultimately have a choice. It might not be easy, but you do have a choice. And it's for all of us and those who work for us to take those responsibilities. There's been, as we know, there's been plenty of people who have hidden behind the idea that they can just say, I was told to do it. So I think all of us and business leaders look at it and say, actually, I have to make those choices and I can't absolve myself from the responsibilities. And that's a bit of a challenge. And by doing that, I think you protect your team from some of those excesses. And it gets recognised and it strengthens. So look at my team, they see that, they support me, and then we work together and it becomes better. Interestingly, the reaction from those maybe asking for these things was almost like almost worse, it's almost taken against it, because somebody who thinks they can just tell you what to do suddenly finds actually maybe you, I think this year's you said to grown a pair, that you're prepared to stand up for yourself. It's like, hold on, I just put you there, and now you're pushing back. That's not what I expected. And it started off as being, that was almost, a bad reaction. And but then over time, it's changed, because it's maybe more of a growing respect. Then scepticism and resistance, sometimes passive, when you stick to it when times are tough. And there is only one way. You have to steel yourself and build a team around you to help you. Absolutely, I know that when I sign people, it's okay, we don't have to really bother. Tom might want to do it this way, he won't be here very long. If we ignore him, he'll probably go away. Is no doubt a common response. And it's an obvious statement, but there is only one way to counter it. It is by being cut in and still being here. And then that pressure, that challenge about money at all costs. And when I thought about it, I thought, is this approach and trying to do the right thing, however that is defined? And I realised earlier why I found it difficult to always say what the right thing was with these different ways of thinking of it, so that was useful. So doing the right thing, is it compatible with making money? And fundamentally, I think it is. I think over a few years, we've managed to grow, we've made the money, and we've behaved in a way which has, I believe, been ethical. It's been hard to achieve, and the choices need to be made and weighed, one against another. And if it isn't the right one, it's actually finding a different way of dealing with it. Actually going away and thinking, actually, the choice is I'm not going to do that. But if that's the outcome where I need to get to, how can I get there properly? That can take hard work and effort, but I think is the only way to approach it. So for me, a lot of this has been pretty simple, good business sense. That by doing the right thing, I've found that those around me have actually strived harder. They've made it easier. They've made us achieve what we want to do, and that challenge more simple. So I'll just sum up. I think, from my experience, the most important ingredients have been about finding my own voice, what I want to achieve, what I think is the right direction, sticking to it under fire, and making those difficult choices, and giving it time, and building a team of like-minded people around you to achieve your goals. Thank you.